Well, for the first time in years, it doesn't necessarily matter that this is a super flex draft because we're not super excited about the quarterbacks. However, this is going to be a super flex mock draft. I'm your host, Adam Wilde. This is the Dynasty newsletter, and I'm joined by Chris Allen. We've also got Dave Kluge, and we've got Alfredo Brown with us today. So we're going to be going counterclockwise through this and just kind of hitting up our picks in this rookie super flex. This is going to be 2 rounds. And so obviously each of us got 4 picks. So let's go ahead and go through those. And I guess, guys, are we gonna comment on each other's picks or save the discourse for the end? I mean, I can berate Chris all show.
That's what you normally do every week.
Yeah, right. Well, I didn't get to last week. So the good thing about Football Guys is when you're out and you miss a show, you're on assignment. Like, when Sig's doing a show and Cecil is at the Senior Bowl, he's on assignment. So when my toddler gets me deathly ill, I was on assignment last week. So I did miss last week, so we'll try to keep the discourse to the end, so unless the pick's really bad like Chris's, but we'll start with you, Dave. We'll start with you with the 101, Dave.
Well, I don't think there's going to be any crazy discourse on this one. Had we done this show, a week or two ago, it would have been kind of crazy to see a running back going first overall, but I will give a little hat tip to our friend Alfredo over here, who said that he wasn't going to take Malik Willis as the 101 and got a lot of crap for it on Twitter. And sure enough, Malik Willis dropped in the 3rd round. Yeah, and here we are now post-draft. The 101 now, I think it's pretty unquestioned at this point. Breece Hall, the unquestioned 101 in rookie drafts. You can make a strong case for Kenneth Walker, and I'm sure Alfredo's going to in just a few minutes. But the Jets had dumped a ton of draft capital into completely revamping their offense right now. We saw the early pick with Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, obviously Jeremy Ruckert there as well. And what they did on offense shouldn't overshadow what they did on defense. They went out and got Sauce Gardner, Jermaine Johnson, and right now this team is really making a push to get young and to get exciting and to really build around Zach Wilson, which is what you want to see. So, Breece Hall might not be a, Jonathan Taylor type prospect. I know some people have made that comp. I don't think that he's quite there, but he is a very capable 3-down back that is stepping into a great position. He should see between 250 to 300 carries as a rookie, which that alone makes him the easy 101 for me. Now let's throw it over to you, Alfredo. Who do you got at 102?
So at the 102, the guy that you mentioned, I'm going to make my case for, and it's Kenneth Walker III. He got drafted by the Seattle Seahawks right after Breece Hall. And the thing is that I already loved Kenneth Walker, the talent, and I actually do like the landing spot even better than where Breece Hall went. The thing with Breece Hall and the Jets is the Jets are really building with a lot of weapons around Zach Wilson, not necessarily Breece Hall, despite their efforts of trying to trade up and taking him early and all that. It's really an offense geared around Zach Wilson with so many mouths to feed, and then it's not a good offense either. Seattle, I know that they're not a good offense, but at least they have an identity, and their identity is running the football. So if my favorite running back goes to the team that wants to run the ball, yeah, I'm pretty excited. They ran the ball 43% of the time last year. That was in the upper half of the league, and that was despite having Russell Wilson and then using guys like Alex Collins and DJ Dallas and Travis Homer for so many games, and they still ran the ball the 13th most times in the league. Now they go and they put draft capital into a guy, and they have Drew Lock under center, who's probably not going to be passing the ball a lot. I'm pretty happy with where Kenneth Walker ended up. They're going to run the ball. They're committing to the run. I'm not overly worried about Rachaad Penny, who's started 6 games in 4 seasons, and all 6 of those were last year. He's also had 6 soft tissue injuries in 4 seasons. So there's just not a lot for me to go off historically that he's going to be healthy. And I know there's been a lot made about the receiving work, right? And they're saying, oh, Seattle's not really going to pass the ball. And maybe they don't pass it a lot, but Chris Carson had 46 targets in 2020. Melvin Gordon with Drew Lock in 2020 had 44 targets. I think it's safe to say that you might see Kenneth Walker somewhere around 35 to 40 targets. It's not going to be a ton of catches, but it's going to be enough to make him good. And I'm kind of done with the bad offense narrative. We've seen too many running backs be good on bad offenses. James Robinson, Javonte Williams, Antonio Gibson, all good running backs, and they've been in split company or bad offenses. So I really like Kenneth Walker going here, and I'll take him at the 102 all day.
So I was a little bit tongue-in-cheek here when I said the unquestioned, because I knew that Alfredo was going to make a very strong
You knew
case
you
for
triggered
Kenneth
me,
Walker.
man. You knew you had
Exactly.
me triggered.
So before we go on to the next pick, let me just ask you guys real quickly. Do either of you have Kenneth Walker ahead of Breece, or is
Of course
it
they
Breece
don't.
and Kenneth Walker for all of you guys?
I think it's still Breece ahead of Kenneth Walker for me, but I think the points that Alfredo laid out, I mean, they all make sense to me. I know that Rachaad Penny, he was essentially the unquestioned RB1 for the back half of last season, but that was just the back half of last season. And who's to say, I mean, assuming health, of course, we would assume that Penny picks up where he left off last year. I don't think that he's going to wind up sustaining that level of production. But at the very least, if we're talking about Walker walking into a running back group by committee, and it's just a two-man committee because Chris Carson can't come back to play because of his neck injury, okay, fine. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I would essentially move him ahead of Breece Hall. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I get the points that Alfredo's making. I totally understand that. But at least if, in my mind, if Breece Hall was coming into this as the better RB prospect, the landing spot isn't the best, but I kind of still lean towards my pre-draft notes in Hall and the talent that comes with Hall.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance to this one, and there's not a lot of nuance to the rest of the draft, so we might as well spend some time on this one. This is the big one because you're definitely going to want to hit on your young running back. First, I would say he's not so much – Breece Hall is not so much Jonathan Taylor. He's more Josh Jacobs, which, if you remember, was very good coming into the league. And so Breece Hall still was, in my opinion, the better prospect in comparison to Kenneth Walker. But then I was going through an exercise getting ready for the show on my way home today, and I was thinking, so it's not the end-all be-all between Michael Carter and Rachaad Penny, who's going to be the bigger threat to the running back that we need to get touches. And remember, running back is the position you need touches right away. Like, you need your rookies to get touches because the only way you can get like incredible running back production without paying too much to hinder your team is through the rookie draft. So you have to hit on your rookie running back. So you need them to go early because these guys are on 4-year contracts. None of them were first-round picks. We've seen first-round picks the past few years, so they would have had the first-round option. These guys don't. So that being said, we need to figure out like who can take over the bulk of the workload immediately. And it's actually pretty close. I mean, Rachaad Penny was a first-round pick 4 years ago and just got the brand new contract, but he was injured, like Alfredo said, all 4 years. Now, how do you explain him being one of the best backs in football for 5 weeks? That's insane, right?
Magic.
Insane.
Schedule.
Right, magic.
Sorcery.
So, well, it can't just be schedule, because I mean, he was injured the whole time. So
I'm saying just schedule. I'm saying part
I'm
of it.
saying the only sample size we have is Rachaad Penny injured, Rachaad Penny good. That's tough. That's tough for us as analysts. So then you make a good bet by saying that Rachaad Penny's going to get injured again. And if your point is that Rachaad Penny's going to get injured again, then you say, well, Kenneth Walker is the easiest path to touches. If you say that Rachaad Penny's not going to get injured again, he actually should have been a first-round pick 4 years ago, and he actually deserved the contract that he just got, then it's easy Michael Carter for me because, like you said before the show, Alfredo, it is a redundant backfield for the Jets, but Breece Hall is better at everything that Michael Carter is okay at. So while I like Michael Carter, and I think he's just about good at everything, he's like what I said with David Montgomery, who is another running back I like. Good at everything is good in the NFL. If you're bad at one thing, they can't put you on the field. You don't have to be great at anything. You just have to be good at everything. So Michael Carter being good at everything is good. It's just that it seems to me that Breece Hall is much better at everything that Michael Carter can do. So to me, there's no real reason why does Michael Carter come off the field any more often than, say, Samaje Perine came on the field for Joe Mixon, which was a little bit, but not enough to worry about Joe Mixon, right? So that's my stance on. I don't think anything needs to move between the two, but they're the only two rookies that you really need to have a compelling conversation about, in my opinion.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, they're such similar players. It's like the Jets saw what they had with Michael Carter, and they said, why not just hit this upgrade button here and get everything that he does plus some? And I think that's what they got in Breece Hall. So I think both of these selections, Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker, what they were very big indictments on Michael Carter and Chris Carson for very different reasons, but it really, really hit both of their dynasty values. But anyway, Chris, why don't you take us to the 103? I have a feeling that this is going to start a receiver run just like we saw on Thursday night. Go ahead and start talking here.
Yeah, so 103, I took Garrett Wilson. And actually, after making the pick, so we just did this yesterday, so Sunday throughout the day, we were just kind of, throwing some shots out there and doing this mock draft kind of as the draft, right after the draft was completed. And I don't know, if I could go back and redo it, I might jumble some things around. But I think at least with Garrett Wilson at the 103, let's think about how we valued Wilson pre-draft. I mean, he was in that top 5 group or tier for the wide receivers coming into it, and he still winds up with the first-round draft capital that we expected for each of those 5 guys that are in there. Drafted as a wide receiver 2 behind Drake London. That's okay. Goes to the Jets. Not the best landing spot because we know being tied to Zach Wilson, not the best. They already have at least 1 to 2 pass catchers ahead of him, whether it's Corey Davis, whether it's Elijah Moore, and of course we can talk about Michael Carter, CJ Uzomah, or any other tight ends they've added during the free agency offseason either as well. But I do think that they needed a prototypical X receiver. They get that in Garrett Wilson. They can move Elijah Moore over to like the Z position or in the slot if they need to, and to float his dynasty value moving forward. But I do think overall, I mean, Wilson kind of putting him at the wide receiver 1 spot. I don't think it's bad. If I go back and take a look at it again, I might move a couple of guys around, and you can make the case for Treylon Burks or Drake London or any of the other guys we'll talk about behind him. But that's going to be my selection at the 103.
All right, and with my pick at the 104, I've got Jameson Williams, and he was my wide receiver 2 pre-draft, but the way he ended up back at my wide receiver 2 is kind of unique in that before the draft, I had Jameson Williams as my wide receiver 2 in redraft and in dynasty, and now he's going to be my biggest disparity between redraft and dynasty, and the reason why is because I believe he went to the perfect situation to not take quite a redshirt year. He doesn't need a redshirt year. We know that ACLs are not the same thing that they've been in the past. So, I've seen some people that have considered the notion of sitting him into November or December. I don't really find that to be necessary. However, it doesn't seem necessary to play week 1 either. The Lions have, from the time Dan Campbell got there, seemed level-headed everywhere except for the fact that they're trying to eat kneecaps. So with that being said, I mean, Jameson Williams probably doesn't start week 1, and they traded up from 32 to get him at 12. So they saw what they had in him. So, you would think that when Drake London went off the board first, that he would probably be the first overall wide receiver off most people's boards. People seemed like they were just looking for a reason to get on the Drake London train. But as the dust kind of settles, I do like Garrett Wilson still my wide receiver 1, and then Jameson Williams still my wide receiver 2. I'm dropping him down in best ball because he's not going to produce right away with the Lions, especially with Jared Goff heading the offense. But I am very confident in this front office right now, and I do feel as though they're going to upgrade the quarterback position next year, whether it be a free agent because the team does look surprisingly appealing right now, or another early draft pick, which would be very smart. You're already paying Jared Goff an egregious amount. Let him do poorly and end up with another top 5 pick next year. And then you're actually probably competing in 23 and 24. And that'll be very exciting for Jameson Williams.
I'm excited about what the Lions are building right now. They got some really fun playmakers over there. If they can get a quarterback and figure it out, that could be a really, really fun team.
They might be my new favorite team.
They got 2 first rounders for next year too. So even if things don't go well, I mean, they can immediately re-up next year and just have a decent quarterback. They can re-up and have a decent quarterback in their laps by this time next year.
Just laying down the blueprint on how to do a rebuild over there in Detroit. Love to see it. Good for them. So over to me at 105. I want to qualify this pick by saying that I was a huge Treylon Burks fan before the combine. Then a lot of people use his really disappointing performance at the pro day and combine to push him down the draft boards. But I just kind of use that as an opportunity to acquire more. I knew that he was going to slip at that point, but we saw this guy continuously burning people in a very strong conference in college, looking like the most athletic guy on the field. So I was prepared to push him down a little bit, but I absolutely love this landing spot now with Tennessee. For them to ship A.J. Brown off and then just bring Treylon Burks into what is assumed to be almost an identical role to what A.J. Brown had, I don't know how you can't not get excited about that. Now, the Titans have done something kind of weird over the last years where they keep going after these really athletic, high-profile receivers. They did it with Kenny Britt, Corey Davis, Darrell Green Beckham. None of them hit. And then they finally strike gold with A.J. Brown and trade him away. So I'm a little bit confused by that. But one thing that really jumps out to me, and this is going straight down narrative street. So, Sig, if you're watching this, I know you'll love it.
Yeah.
But Robert Woods being there in Tennessee, I feel like is going to be such a good benefit to Treylon Burks. The way that they play, where they get, assumed to be having the ball fed to them in space where they can get schemed open, being important parts of the run blocking game. I really like the idea of Treylon Burks learning from Robert Woods. So this is a good landing spot where he can easily walk into 120, 130 targets as a rookie. So I'm more than happy to take Treylon Burks here at 105.
All right. So at 106, and before I get to mine though, I do have a little bit of a bone to pick with you, Dave.
What's that?
So okay, so let's I want to ask this about Treylon Burks, right? You talk about maybe him getting 130 plus targets, right? In such a low off. I mean, AJ Brown wasn't doing that. So why are we going to expect that with Treylon?
Well, AJ Brown was pacing for about 9 targets a game, and if you extrapolate that over a full season,
this year, but like in his first couple of seasons, right? Like, so I'm just getting to this is what happens if Treylon Burks isn't doing that his first 2 years? Like, what happens if Treylon Burks isn't AJ Brown? Does everyone start to panic on him a little bit?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, AJ Brown was able to pull a top 10 target share every single year. Even though it was a low volume passing offense, he was still getting the elite target share. And that's what I'm projecting for Treylon Burks. But also when you look at it, I mean, not that there was a huge slew of talented pass catchers in Tennessee, but Jonnu Smith was there. Anthony Firkser was there. Delaney Walker was there, I believe, for the first year. Corey Davis. So AJ Brown came into a situation where he had more target competition than Treylon Burks does right now. I mean, really all Treylon Burks has to deal with is Nick Westbrook-Akine and a 30-year-old Robert Woods coming off of an ACL tear. So I think that he's going to be the focal point of this offense. You know, they can't just keep running Derrick Henry into the ground. We know how efficient Ryan Tannehill can be. So I'm hoping that they just, you know, start to pass a little bit more than we've seen over the last few years.
Yeah, hoping they can get there. If they do, and Ryan Tannehill is his career best self that he was with AJ Brown, then yeah, Treylon's going to be great. I'll move on to my pick and stop harassing you. At the 106, I took Drake London, the wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons. I'm really, really close to making him my wide receiver 1 overall. I've had Jameson Williams there this whole time, and Drake London, I kind of expected him to go pretty early and possibly go to the Atlanta Falcons. And for him, it's just so much about this talent meeting opportunity. He's one of the guys that I genuinely see him. It's incredibly easy for him to get 130 plus targets. He's a guy that he was already so good in college. And, he's, let's say, okay, an Arthur Smith offense, right? Doesn't really throw a whole lot. And that's what we saw with the Titans and Ryan Tannehill for so long. And even last year, Arthur Smith hit a career high in pass attempts for his offense with 33.7, which was like 19th in the league. Like, it's not good. There's not going to be a high volume. Now you take out Matt Ryan and you throw in Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ridder. I don't think that passing volume goes up. So there's warts on all these guys, right? And there's a case for each of them to be the wide receiver 1 or the wide receiver, 4. The thing is that even if they pass 30 times a game, it's kind of like what you were talking about, Dave. There's no competition outside of Kyle Pitts. Like, it's Olamide Zaccheaus and Auden Tate and a bunch of other guys that I don't even. Sharp. Sure. Is he even still there? Like, I don't even know.
Hey, don't slander my guy Auden Tate. All right, that's one of the Cincinnati Bengals' greatest receivers.
He's got a lot of supporters out there, man. Auden Tate.
I love me some Auden Tate.
my point was this, though, with Drake London is, like, even if they pass the ball 30 times a game, there's a good shot Drake London is getting probably 8 or more of those targets per game just because of lack of talent. And I think that he's one of those guys that we could see him be a lot like Jalen Waddle was last year, where maybe he wasn't your clear-cut number 1 wide receiver, but he's going to get so much volume simply because there's not a lot of talent around him. And he could become the go-to guy. He's a talented guy. He's used to that at USC. He was used on a lot of screens, short routes. And you can imagine with this Arthur Smith offense, Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ridder, whoever's throwing it, there's going to be a lot of play action stuff, crossing the field and just hit the big targets, either Pitts or Drake London. So he's got a really easy path to volume. I like him here at the 106.
No, I definitely like that pick. So kicking over to me, 107. And again, like, now that I'm thinking about it, I think I shot from the hip too much, like in this mock draft. And I think I went too early on Chris Olave at 107. I think if I could go back and redo it, I'd probably go back and I would actually almost definitely go back and take Skyy Moore over Chris Olave. But I did like, everything everybody liked Olave, kind of in that second tier-ish of wide receivers for this particular draft class. While I do think he had most of the traits and skill set and definitely the production at Ohio State in order to be a, let's say, 1B at best. And I think he winds up in a situation where he can be that, assuming health for Michael Thomas. He comes into that offense, works alongside another great Ohio State receiver. But still, looking at his competition for targets, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, at best, he's probably the second or third option in his own offense. Whereas by contrast, Skyy Moore, who will be, I think, Dave, I think you got him a couple picks later, if I'm remembering correctly, or that was Alfredo that got him. So I think that's where the contrast lies in terms of, competition for targets, much better, and also the team outlook. So for Skyy Moore, you're always going to be able to bet on the fact that he's going to be tied to Patrick Mahomes. Olave, while now for at least the next 1-2 years, maybe, got Jameis Winston, who is volatile at best. But after the Saints finally decide to reset and tear it all down with the number of contracts they're paying out on their defense and offense, what is that offense or even team situation going to look like for Olave? So while I selected him at the 107, I can see him falling a little bit later, and I would switch up my wide receiver ranks in order to reflect that. So probably push Skyy Moore ahead of him. But for right now, I'll own it and kind of walk through my thought process there. I have Olave at 107.
Well, let me just throw this out to you, Chris. I mean, we know how quickly situations change. And I feel like I see everybody doing this now, moving Skyy Moore up ahead of Chris Olave because of the landing spot. And I get it. But what happens when, let's say hypothetically they trade for DK Metcalf, or let's say Deebo Samuel becomes a Kansas City Chief, or let's say Juju Smith-Schuster has a total resurgence and becomes the bona fide wide receiver one there. I don't know if I can really understand moving Skyy Moore up. I think you got to stick to your priors a little bit, just because I think Olave is such a pro-ready, do-it-all type of receiver. And with the Saints putting that high first-round draft capital into him, I think it's totally okay taking Chris Olave ahead of Skyy Moore. I don't really see a big issue with that.
No, it's not to say that I was 100% wrong in it. It's just more of when you compare the two, while it's possible, but I would say less likely for like a massive trade for DK Metcalf at this point. Or even if Juju has the resurgence, let's say over the next year or so, are we expecting like Travis Kelce to still remain with that team? So it's like the competition for targets then kind of recedes for Skyy Moore. And he's still attached to Patrick Mahomes. So I don't know. I think it's kind of a toss up, and I think I would probably still lean Skyy Moore. Maybe that's just because I'm more of a believer in Patrick Mahomes versus Jameis Winston than anything else. But yeah, I see your points though. Well taken.
All right, that's going to bring me up to my pick. And I thought when you were leading into the mistake you made there, I thought you were going to break the quarterback shield. Nope. I was just going to go Skyy Moore instead of Chris Olave and leave the first-round quarterback on the – okay, yeah, I wasn't excited about making the pick either, but I've got Kenny Pickett here at the 108, which is insane to say at a Superflex rookie mock, but here we are. I still don't understand what happened on draft night. I'm never going to get it. We're also never going to get the time we spent on – think about all the time we spent on Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder, Corral, all those guys, and they got drafted behind the likes of Kyle Trask and Kellen Mond. I never in a million years would have – right. But my point, I didn't spend that much time evaluating Kellen Mond, I promise. And Kellen Mond is technically a better prospect right now than Malik Willis. That's just bonkers. So I landed on the only viable quarterback. We'll talk about the other quarterbacks later in the draft. I've got Kenny Pickett here at 108. Not a lot of great things to say besides he was picked 20. He's a first-round pick. And
he's a quarterback.
Look, and he's a quarterback in Superflex. I will say, it seems as though maybe people are forgetting the Mitchell Trubisky we got, or just assuming rather that over the past 2 years he's improved. And while people can improve, you don't really get to improve much on your game when you get maybe 2 practice reps at practice. Lots and lots and lots of retired quarterbacks have talked about the amount of repetition that the backup quarterbacks get, and it's minuscule, sometimes 0. So, Mitchell Trubisky improving over the past 2 years would be surprising to say the least. So I don't think that it would be very long, if any time at all, before Kenny Pickett overtakes Mitchell Trubisky. If it's close, what keeps you from pulling the trigger on Kenny Pickett, who is technically your future, over Mitchell Trubisky? So I think he probably starts early, and if we get some positive buzz, he's going to end up probably being like the 104, the 105. He's going to get talked up over some of these wide receivers for sure.
Imagine drafting your quarterback with 8.5-inch hands. My God, man.
Yeah, the real question, all we really need to know is if he's going to wear the gloves or not. That's all.
Dude's going to be out there. It's going to be
okay.
November. Dude's going to be out there having to throw the football with both hands.
Don't make fun of people with small hands. All right, it's hard enough for us to hold our cups.
I'm not an NFL
okay,
player.
We have a lot of issues already, man. And the day that we found out his hand size, I went home, measured, and I was like, oh crap, exact same hand size.
You know how many
It's
people
tough.
I'm almost 5'9". You know how many people I call short on a regular basis in Dynasty running backs coming into the league that are my exact same body type?
Right.
Well, speaking of which, I think that takes me to my pick here at 110, 5'9", James Cook. And I gotta say, I was a huge fan of James Cook way before the draft. And he was a guy when I was doing some of my early rookie drafts, I was consistently taken in the late second, early third round. And then he got a fantastic landing spot. He got really good draft capital. And I'll be the first to admit it, I might be getting a little ahead of my skis right here by taking him at the 109, especially with Skyy Moore, Rachaad White, Jahan Dotson, and some of these other guys available on the board. But I am such a big fan of James Cook, and I just can't ignore the ceiling. We've seen some pretty big moves so far from the Bills this offseason, bringing in Jamison Crowder, OJ Howard, spending a second-round pick on James Cook. And I think that they're going to try to change up their offense a little bit more by spreading it out more than we've seen in the past a little bit. Now, I talked with Alfredo about this before the show, and we talked about it. I mean, you're really hoping that Josh Allen is going to switch up what he does, which is when he gets in trouble, tuck the ball and run. I mean, drafting James Cook here, you're hoping that they're going to be able to coach him to check down a little bit more than he has in the past. So that is a little bit of a scary sight, but just talking from a pure talent standpoint with how bouncy this guy is, I could just see him really, really feasting in an offense that's going to spread the ball out and have big open spots on the field. So, like I said, first to admit I could be getting a little bit excited by taking him this early, but big fan of the talent here. Even though he's under 200 pounds, I'll happily take James Cook.
All right, so that puts me up at the 110. And hey, Dave, thanks for taking James Cook instead. I took him the other day in a mock at 111, and I felt dirty. I needed to go take a shower. But at the 110, you let me get Skyy Moore. And I mean, there's not much more for me to say than what Chris already said. He's just in a great landing spot. He's a really talented prospect. I think we were all kind of just waiting to see who goes to the Packers, who goes to the Chiefs, and then we were all going to fall in love with that player. And it just so happened that I felt like everyone was falling in love with Skyy Moore before he even got drafted. And then he just ended up in the right spot. He'll get to start on the outside. Juju will remain in that slot. And I think the cool thing about Skyy Moore is he's not like a one-trick pony. This was a guy that in college had 26 broken tackles last season, which was most in the FBS. He's got great hands. Actually, I think it was like second or third best in the class. He's right up there with Pickens and Dotson with just a 3.3% career drop rate. And now there's 159 vacated targets in Kansas City. I know that vacated targets aren't everything, but Tyreek Hill leaves behind a lot of targets. It's not all going to Juju, and it's not all going to Travis Kelce. There's going to be a disbursement of these things. Skyy Moore is going to be a starter day one in potentially a top 4 offense in the league. So to get that at the end of this round in a draft that doesn't really have an overwhelming amount of talent, I'm ecstatic to see him fall to the 110. And I don't know that happens in a lot of drafts when you start to do these rookie drafts.
Yeah, and for people listening, when you say Skyy Moore is a day one starter and people are out there like, what about Mecole? Well, I'm a showdown. I'm an NFL showdown degenerate, and I was very, very on top of the snap shares last year. And I can tell you that Mecole Hardman was ceding snaps to not only Byron Pringle, but he was also behind Demarcus Robinson. And he also managed to become 5th behind Josh Gordon to finish the year. So Mecole Hardman is not the one you need to worry about. And Byron Pringle left. I think Robinson signed up again. Josh Gordon, okay, whatever. There's no one. Yes, he's the day one starter. He's going to get the third most snaps at the receiver position.
So you say
Alfredo,
all that.
did you say 159 vacated targets?
For Tyreek Hill, not for the whole.
I was going to say Byron Pringle.
No.
Chicago Bears wide receiver 1. He's got to mean something to you, right?
Dave, don't air your grievances here about your awful Chicago Bears wide receiver.
I'm not gonna say anything bad about the Chicago Bears right now. Bears fans have it bad enough.
Yeah, we've mentioned Byron Pringle way too many times today.
Yeah, with the second round picks that y'all made, like I know you needed to like boost your defense and whatnot, but that's
just wait till I take Velus Jones with this next pick, all right?
Yeah, Justin Fields, we're praying for you.
I cannot
prayer circle.
I cannot rank Velus Jones. I will not do it.
I'll just leave it at that. All right. Is it to me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think my general strategy at this point, like once we get through, like say the first couple of tiers of wide receivers, I think like Pickens is still coming up. But after this, I'm just kind of throwing darts at the running backs here at this point versus trying to figure out if I really care about some of the later wide receivers that went like back end of day 2, day 3, or whatever. But no, I thought Rachaad White, I mean, getting signed or, getting selected by the Bucs, I think excellent landing spot, because we know that they needed, or they were looking for, that type of pass catching running back. I mean, even when they brought in my guy Gio from Cincy, they were looking for that function on offense. And while Leonard Fournette was able to carry that load throughout most of the season, even though he still wound up getting hurt towards the back end, that's what they wanted on that team. Rachaad White comes in, I think it was like a 2.25 yards per route run, according to Pro Football Focus, like in his final season. And that's like literally double that of Breece Hall. I mean, and also he was like one of the best in the class in terms of being an efficient pass catcher out of the backfield. So if that's something that we knew that Tampa Bay needed, and now that they have both, I mean, Gio's still a part of the team. LF is still there. So if now they bring in Rachaad White as well, we can see him definitely be able to, get in those types of touches. I mean, those good touches that we want for a running back right out of the gate. And so while he might only have that type of viability for, let's say, the next couple of years, while Brady still kicks it around the league before he winds up retiring again, I still think, at least like for right now, for the first couple of seasons, I think Rachaad White is definitely a solid pick right there at 112.
Hey, Chris, before we move on, can I ask you a question here about Rachaad White?
Yeah.
So does Keyshawn Vaughn, this is one of the only running backs you didn't mention, does Keyshawn Vaughn like worry you at all?
No.
Okay. And what if it's the other thing you mentioned was Brady, right? So if Brady's done after one season, how does that affect kind of your dynasty outlook of Rachaad White here, like over a 2-3 season, sample size? If Brady's not there in Rachaad White's second season, does he still have kind of that same value for you? How much does he drop?
It would probably drop like a decent amount, because my assumption going into this is that he'll be able to work in alongside like Gio, and they'll be able to bring him in throughout most of the season. And we'll be able to see how well his skills translate, like from college, like to the NFL. And if I can at least see the talent, I can at least see the pathway to him being able to, as long as he gets like some more work, and it's really just a function of his offensive situation at that point once Brady leaves, then I'd be okay with it. I mean, of course, the workload drops, and of course we have to drop his value, but at least I want to be able to see that skill set, because just like we were talking earlier, for each of these running backs, we really need to see like if they're capable of being able to translate their skills to the pro level. And for White, I mean, his pathway is through being able to catch the ball, and if we can still see that shiftiness, if we can still see those smooth, soft hands at the pro level, then okay, fine. It's just that we might have to just dock him a little bit, because they're going to have to. I hope they don't go to Kyle Trask. We'll see what else they might have like working behind there. But you see what I'm saying, though? Like we might just have to like wait and see like what the Bucs offense looks like post Brady.
Yeah, but let me add, if you don't have Tom Brady next year, then you probably don't have Leonard Fournette either. So your offense is going to be downgraded, but his touches are going to be, and you probably don't have Giovanni Bernard either. There's no reason to keep Leonard Fournette or Giovanni Bernard around if you are in full rebuild, which is exactly what they're going to have to do after Tom Brady leaves. So he'll be in a bad offense, of course, but it might be a really nice play to go for him in the late first right now, when there's so much uncertainty past, say, like 107, 108, and just shoot for the upside of somebody who might be has a rare opportunity for bell cow touches next year. And bell cow touches only go to 5 or 6 players in the NFL right now. So it's not, you don't have to go too far down narrative street to see Rachaad White in the lead role actually next year. So I actually like that pick a lot. I would have made that pick. But unfortunately, you made me make the pick that I did make, which is Jahan Dotson. The only thing worse than having 8.75-inch hands is playing for the Washington Commanders in my rankings. So when he got drafted to the Commanders, I felt bad, because my cousin, who doesn't, he's a big Washington fan, but not a big dynasty fan or anything like that, asked me, like, what do you think about Jahan Dotson? I said, unfortunately, I wanted him to be our sacrificial lamb, because I knew that somebody had to go to the Washington Commanders. And while I wasn't necessarily out on Jahan Dotson in any way, he was my least favorite of he was part of my big 5. But I'm glad Treylon Burks, Olave, all of them didn't end up going to the Commanders. It ended up being Jahan Dotson, who I believe was a pretty big reach. He should have been going more around where Christian Watson went, in my opinion. So I think he falls into that first round range still. I believe this is 112 here. But that's just because he was a first round pick. I mean, Kadarius Toney was a first round pick, and we took him at 207. I do like Jahan Dotson a considerable amount more, but I'm just saying you don't have to rank them above, say, like Skyy Moore, for people who are just doing maybe one dynasty draft and they're like, you know what, I'm just going to make my rankings based on what the NFL did. Well, no, I mean, you can probably consider Christian Watson. You can probably consider Skyy Moore. Well, you can definitely draft Skyy Moore ahead of Jahan Dotson. So with that being said, I'll take Jahan Dotson here at 112 just because of how the board falls. Not necessarily a pick that I have a whole lot of conviction about. I still believe in Jahan Dotson as a player. I don't believe in the Washington Commanders organization in any way, shape, or form.
All right. Well, I guess that pushes it on to me then. And I think Kevin Colbert, when he saw this guy still on the board when they were on their pick, I think he just couldn't help himself. As much as I wanted to see George Pickens land in Kansas City or Green Bay or even Chicago, just about anywhere. I'm not crazy about the landing spot, but I just love George Pickens. And this is such an on-brand pick for the Steelers. We've seen this with Chase Claypool just a couple of years ago. We saw Martavis Bryant back in the day. These big, fast guys that, for whatever reason, have some character concerns. That seems to be what the Steelers really like when they draft wide receivers. Now, we saw at the end of the season, there were a lot of frustrations with Chase Claypool and Mike Tomlin kind of button heads a little bit. We saw it on the field. We heard about it off the field. There have been some trade rumors. And I think right now with this move to get Pickens in the second round, I think that shows that they're kind of done with Chase Claypool. And I mean, he's probably still going to be on the team. I don't know what type of trade market there is, but I think that they're going to start grooming George Pickens to be that wide receiver 2 behind Deontay Johnson in Pittsburgh. Now, whether you expect Kenny Pickett to be the starter or Mitchell Trubisky, there are some concerns there with the quarterback play, but I think this guy has the talent to be one of the premier receivers in the league. And had he been drafted by Green Bay, like so many people were expecting, I think we'd be drafting him as a top 4, top 5, top 6 guy. So this landing spot pushes him down a little bit, but I'm still a big believer in his talent. He's just an aggressive guy that can make plays after the catch. Big fan of George Pickens here. And if he keeps staying at that 1 to 2 turn, I'm going to have some pretty high exposure on George Pickens this year.
I like it. I mean, Steelers, I heard this stat like earlier today, the Steelers have drafted the most wide receivers inside like the top 100 over the past like 10 or 12 years since like Colbert has been their GM and like calling the shots there. They've been, from a process standpoint, they've been one of those teams that have been just at the forefront of re-upping their wide receiver room and keeping it fresh. And they've hit on, some pretty solid ones over the last few years. So it definitely makes sense that this is a pick that they would want to make at that point in the draft.
And I think we'll find out this year whether it is the Steelers scouting that is really good at wide receivers or if Ben Roethlisberger just had a knack for bringing out the best in people. We'll find out pretty soon.
It could be. They've had some really good ones in the past. Juju was good in his own right. Of course, Antonio Brown, like blah, blah, blah. But then you get a few, Ray McLeod's in there every now and again.
James Washington, yep.
James Washington. Well, we'll see about James Washington. I don't know. The jury might still be out. But yeah, you see what I'm saying.
All right, Alfredo, over to you. We're in the second round now in 202. Who you got?
Dave, I actually love your pick right there of George Pickens at 201, and I was kind of hoping he would fall to me here. This was more of like gun to my head. I had to pick this player because he was left, and it's Christian Watson, wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. And I'm not super high on Christian Watson. I think as a prospect, he's incredibly raw. And if there's one thing that Aaron Rodgers hates, it's being patient with a raw prospect who's going to have to learn. Like, there's not a lot of time for Aaron Rodgers. I can't imagine he's going to be in the league for a long time. And so it's not like there's this young developmental quarterback that's going to grow up with Christian Watson. And it's Watson's skills, his best strengths don't marry with what Rodgers' strengths are. Rodgers is a timing thrower that looks for guys that have good route running processes. Watson's not that dude. Watson is, I'm tall, I'm fast, chuck it. I'm open somewhere. That's not really been Rodgers' thing. And so, yeah, Christian Watson had one of the best relative athletic scores, and he's really, really fast. He's a big guy, and he's got that prototypical alpha size you want, but he also had over a 13% career drop rate. So let's get that in there. Like, I'm talking down my own pick. I'm hating it, but it's the fact that I made this pick. Like, if
Welcome
I was
to the club,
like if I was stuck making this pick, I'd probably immediately try to trade it to whoever the Aaron Rodgers manager is in my league, because Watson, I just don't like the fit there. The 13.3% career drop rate in college, 30% contested catch rate, which, just to give it context, Dave, your pick, who you weren't too sold on, George Pickens, was at a 64% contested catch rate. So yeah, he's more than doubled Christian Watson. I just don't like the fit. I think the prospect is raw. I liked them initially, and I kind of went back to it, and I don't really like it. Now we even look at this. The best rookie wide receiver season with Aaron Rodgers was 38 receptions, 446 yards, 3 touchdowns. That was Devontae Adams. That sucks. Okay. I'm not excited about Christian Watson's rookie season. Maybe he starts to develop more in the second year, third year. And if I'm willing to be patient, then sure. But there's also no guarantee that by the third year, Aaron Rodgers is still there. He's threatening to retire or leave or get traded every single year. So I'm not ecstatic about this pick. I would be trying to either trade out of it or trade this player.
Now, one thing I'd like to point out, Alfredo, is there was one rookie who actually commanded more targets than Devontae Adams did. And that was Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who is basically a carbon copy of Christian Watson. If you want to talk big, straight line speed, doesn't do contested catches, drops a lot of balls. I mean, that's pretty much Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I mean, we're talking about the same guy here. So I think this
they just found a new guy to drop passes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but yeah, I think if I had to bet between whether he gets more targets or he gets yelled at by Rodgers more this season, I'm going to err on the getting yelled at by Rodgers because I expect a lot of that in his rookie season.
Yeah, definitely. Although I guess there is some value to having players that like tactically on the field can provide that function to you. Because I do think that was part of the Packers' downfall, like in the playoffs, like when MVS was injured, he wasn't capable of being out there because you do need those types of guys that can clear out safeties, draw some corner attention so that if you're trying to do any sort of, let's say, like high-low combo, sail routes or anything like that, you need somebody to kind of pull that defense away so that Devontae Adams can work underneath. And I think that's what kind of was somewhat of their downfall. So if we want Allen Lazard's season to really be a thing, a guy like Christian Watson would be that guy to help pull away that defensive attention so that we can actually see that happen.
Why trade up in the second round for that when you could just sign Jakeem Grant off the street for $500,000?
Because that's what Gutekunst likes, man. I'm tall, I'm fast. I go vroom vroom. You're a Packer now.
Everybody's got a type in Green Bay. They definitely have their type. That's why whenever I heard folks talking about like Skyy Moore possibly to the Packers, I was like, ain't no way. Like, there's no way he does not fit the size speed thresholds like for the Packers. There's just no way. I don't care what your value or evaluation of him is. If you just look at like how he, not even how he plays, it's just he doesn't check the boxes that the Packers need in order to draft a guy like that. It just won't happen. So, all right. So to me, Zamir White, Las Vegas Raiders. And I'm with you. I'm kind of like Alfredo. It's just, I'm just going to start throwing darts at some players here. Like, can I see, like, in that backfield, of course, Josh Jacobs at the head, can I see White kind of working in the background as, like, the RB2, kind of in the Kenyon Drake role, like in the past, since Kenyon Drake injured last season? Josh Jacobs, I mean, while I'm looking more for, like, towards, like, the pass-catching type of backs. Like, that's what I was targeting when I looked at Rachaad White in my previous pick. And it's really not the case for Zamir. I think he totaled 20 receptions throughout his entire collegiate production. So it's not like we can expect that out of him. But still, if he can at least pull in that RB2 workload, kind of working behind Josh Jacobs, I mean, that'd be fine for me. And especially with the fact that this is going to be a team that we know is at least trying to make the move so they can stay relevant in the AFC West, trading for Devontae Adams, also making some moves on defense as well so they can at least contend within their own division. I would assume that there's going to be at least a decent workload for all of the running backs, not just Josh Jacobs. So I can see Zamir White kind of rotating in quite a bit like throughout his rookie season, and hopefully he can hit on a couple of plays. Kind of like who was the guy last year? Who's it? The backup for David Montgomery that we wound up being able to use.
Khalil Herbert.
Herbert.
Yeah. So in that kind of, in that type of vein.
He's set up to take over this role sooner rather than later. With Josh Jacobs not coming back, I mean, Zamir White could be the starter within a year.
He's the Dameon Harris. Yeah, he's the Dameon Harris for the Raiders offense now.
I said he's much more Dwayne Washington than he is Jalen Richard. If you guys remember Dwayne Washington, when they had Washington and Richard backing up Jacobs, both getting a little bit of touches, but Washington was like relieving Jacobs on early downs, and then Richard was relieving Jacobs on later downs because they couldn't just let Jacobs run the ball. But either way, Zamir White would be the early down back. I mean, Kenyon Drake is still there, so Zamir White might get worked in a little bit this year, kind of like Khalil Herbert did. Maybe we have an injury to Josh Jacobs or something like that. But yeah, that's another one where we're at the point in the draft where you're not going to get, like, early in the draft, it's like either this guy's the starter or one thing needs to happen for this guy to be the starter. Then you get to the point where in the draft where it's like, all right, this guy needs 3 things to happen, and this other guy needs 6 things to happen. I'm going to take the guy that needs 3 things to happen. So that leads me to my pick, which is Malik Willis. I cannot explain, never will be able to explain how he fell so far. Legitimate NFL personalities believed he could go 102. Legitimate NFL personalities believed, okay, he may not go 102, but he's a definite first-round pick. So it's not just like Dynasty got it wrong. Like, everyone got it wrong. The people who get paid the most money to cover this game got it wrong. So Malik Willis falls to the 3rd round. But look, if you just take out of your head the fact that we thought that he was going to be the 102 or that he was going to be a first-round pick, just think about the fact, okay, this guy had some upside, played at a small school, got drafted in the 3rd round. We're talking about Dak Prescott now. Okay, like, it has happened very few times, but that doesn't mean that there's not potential at this point in the draft to say, all right, let's look at Tannehill's contract for a second. If they release him next year, they're saving about $30 million. So if you look at it like that, it's a little more rosy to say that all Malik Willis needs to do is be like greater than or equal to Ryan Tannehill. That's not to say that Ryan Tannehill is not a decent quarterback in his own right, but is he $30 million more than Malik Willis, better than Malik Willis? And that's probably not the case. Essentially, is he 30 times better than Malik Willis? No, he's probably not going to be. So Malik Willis has to be competent enough to play the game of football, obviously. And given that he fell to the 3rd round, we don't know necessarily that he is. But if the NFL just did something weird and was just wrong, then Malik Willis being drafted in the 3rd round to the Titans, who I believe are a very good organization, kind of the writing's on the wall for him to still end up being a starter in the NFL, even though I can't explain why he ended up in the 3rd round. So most upside outside of, Kenny Pickett, only because he was the 20th pick overall. But, just this time last week, we had Malik Willis head and shoulders above Kenny Pickett, almost all of them, right? All of us, right? So, you take him a round later now, obviously, because he got picked 2 rounds later in the NFL draft. But, after you're done crying, you can kind of catch your breath and say, all right, maybe it's not so bad for Malik Willis.
And Adam, when do you think that Malik Willis could actually be a starter? Because they do have Ryan Tannehill for 2 more years, and there's kind of like this competitive window now.
Yeah, so
it would have to be contract though. They can cut him without saving or without like losing any money after the season.
They save like 30 mil.
They still get 18 mil in dead cap. So I mean, there's a lot of ifs. Like they do save, right? But I mean, they save a lot. Yeah, but do you save at the risk of not being competitive anymore? Because Malik Willis' first season, are they still going to be competing for AFC championships, or is it a hard reset? Especially with Derrick Henry, there I feel like they have that window.
That's the advantage of the later drafts for people who have the later drafts, because there might be Malik Willis packages. And if we have Malik Willis packages, then now we're talking about like the Lamar Jackson, Joe Flacco transition, where he is definitely the plan. And, maybe the Titans just knew something, because they did still trade up for Malik. So maybe the Titans just had good intel and moved up to where they knew that they needed to get Malik Willis. Maybe they still felt like he was not a first-round prospect, obviously, because they would have traded for him much earlier, but maybe they felt like he was a second-round prospect or something like that, to where they actually think they can go with him in the future. Either way, it was an excellent pick for them, just for the upside and the savings. If he doesn't work out, we forget that they drafted Malik Willis in the 3rd. Who cares? But he has the ceiling to really, really work out, and you don't have to change your offense that much from Ryan Tannehill to Malik Willis either.
Yeah. So, I mean, everything you said, you could pretty much just apply to my pick right here at 205 with Desmond Ridder. Same exact thing. I mean, this is a guy that had he been drafted in the 1st round, we'd be talking about him as a top 3, top 4, top 5 pick in this draft without even thinking twice. But because he slid in the draft, I don't know what the reason for his slide was, but he slid. It's something that, there's probably going to be books written about it in history, this 2021 draft that just went completely off the rails. But you know what you're getting with Desmond Ridder if he gets the ability to start. I mean, the guy ran a 4.52 at his at the combine. He is a dual threat, Konami code, call it whatever you want. I mean, this is a guy that's going to be able to put up a lot of fantasy points. And now knowing that when he does get his opportunity, whether it be him beating out Mariota in camp this year, which is about a 0.1% chance, whether it be him taking over midseason when they're already completely out of contention. If he takes over at any point, he gets to step into an offense with Drake London and Kyle Pitts. That's going to make any quarterback look pretty good, especially somebody with the upside like Desmond Ridder. So, I mean, worst case scenario here, he's probably going to get a few spot starts at the end of the season. Best case scenario, you just got a locked and loaded Konami quarterback in the mid-second round of your rookie draft. So both of these guys at value, Malik Willis and Desmond Ridder, are two of my favorite guys to draft right now in the mid-second. I feel like we overcorrected a little bit by pushing them down. I think that realistically they should probably go in, 7th to 10th overall, but I'll gladly take them at this point.
Yeah, Dave, I really like Desmond Ridder. I think that the possibility of him being a day one starter is even greater than you think. I mean, it's Marcus Mariota. Like, he's not going up against some other crazy Pro Bowl quarterback. So there is a good shot there. At the 206, I took Dameon Pierce, running back out of Florida, who's now with the Houston Texans. Dameon Pierce was already my guy. I really like Dameon Pierce, and he's one of those players that I think the NFL and NFL scouts were higher on than the fantasy community for so long, simply because he didn't have a lot of that production. He wasn't one of the sexy names coming out. He didn't have a super awesome combine, but he did a lot of those intangible things that don't show up for fantasy. Like, he's a really good blocker. So, but those are the things that are going to keep him on the field for 3 downs. And he goes to a team like the Houston Texans that he's got Marlon Mack coming off of the torn Achilles. He's got Rex Burkhead, who is Rex Burkhead. And so, like, Dameon Pierce has it. It's weird, but he's got a really easy path to potential 3-down work on a team that could be kind of decent, at least better than last year. So, I mean, and to get him here at the 18th pick in this draft, like, I've flirted with taking him at the 112, the 201, 202. That might be a little high, but if you can get a 3-down running back, I really like it.
I think that's solid. I think any of these like running backs that are going towards the back, like the middle to back end of the second round, they've been really intriguing. And that kind of leads me into my guy, like Isaiah Spiller, drafted what I believe like 1 pick behind Zamir White, the guy I took in my previous pick, but he goes to a much better landing spot with the Chargers. Cause I know that we think of Austin Eckler as his workhorse, cause he's been essentially their RB1 from not just a like rush attempt, but also pass catching standpoint as well. I mean, a redraft, he's what, top 5, top 6 pick for some folks. But even Austin Eckler has been asking for a complimentary guy to go alongside of him. Justin Jackson has been fine, but in terms of longevity, he hasn't been staying healthy long enough in order to get the job done. Joshua Kelly, Larry Roundtree. I mean, it doesn't matter who they've taken in order to like play alongside him. They just haven't been able to do it. Isaiah Spiller can also work between the tackles. I think he had 20 to 24 receptions like in all 3 of his college seasons. So I think between those two, it seems like that would be the more complementary duo that you expect for the Chargers. And with them also upgrading their offensive line, defense, and so on and so forth, I think it's just a slam dunk pick, like for at least a mid to late second round guy that you can get in your rookie drafts.
One thing I'll add to that too is Justin Jackson is gone, and that kind of slipped through the cracks. A lot of people didn't realize that. So right now, Isaiah Spiller is number 2 on the depth chart. I mean, he is a tweaked ankle away from a massive workload on one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL. So yeah, I love that pick for Spiller.
And then this next pick, I'm going with Alec Pierce, and this is somebody who I wasn't incredibly high on going into the draft, and we're not incredibly high on him now, right? We're talking about the 208, but at this point in the draft, I'd prefer to look towards especially in this draft with so much uncertainty, I'd prefer to look towards like organizations that I trust, and I guess maybe not safe because T.Y. Hilton should be gone, and they have basically Paris Campbell has shown essentially nothing. And so you basically just have Michael Pittman and who else, right? And then Alec Pierce kind of profiles sort of like Michael Pittman. So it could be a nice combination for Matt Ryan there. So they get an upgraded quarterback. So it's not so much about Alec Pierce and whether I liked him or not coming into the draft as much as this is a dart that I would love to throw because everything around him is a plus. He gets pluses for all those things I mentioned. So he just needs to be the competent one there. And that's what I was talking about, where you only need that one thing to happen. Well, he stays on the field if he's competent at football, just based on everything that's going on around him. So Alec Pierce is probably going to be one of my higher owned players. And he's a player that I wasn't even really a fan of during the process. It's just landed in a fantastic, fantastic situation with good draft capital.
Yeah, love that pick, and we know that Matt Ryan is more than capable of supporting 2 fantasy relevant wide receivers. So like that one. On to my pick, this is one, we're all kind of getting to that point where we're feeling kind of gross about the picks that we're making here. And I feel kind of gross about Wan'Dale Robinson. I love the guy watching him play. He is as explosive as they come on the field. I mean, this guy does everything, but the major red flags are obviously the fact that he is 5'8", 179 pounds. I went back, looked historically in NFL history. There was only one guy under 5'9" that has a 1,000-yard season, and that was didn't even know who this guy was. Richard Johnson in 1989 with the Detroit Lions at 5'7". I mean, it just simply doesn't happen. Right. Wes Welker was 5'9", Steve Smith was 5'9", so that kind of seems to be the cutoff. Once you get underneath that, you are approaching dangerous territory here. But at the end of the day, Wan'Dale Robinson, there was only one guy that we've talked about so far tonight that has more receiving yards in 2021 than Wan'Dale Robinson, and that was Jameson Williams. I mean, this guy just produced. Everybody saw it at the Citrus Bowl when he just took over 10 receptions for 170 yards. I mean, this guy can literally do it all. Much like my last pick with George Pickens, where I kind of see the writing on the wall that Chase Claypool is being pushed out of the way in favor of George Pickens. I kind of see that happening with the Giants now, with Wan'Dale Robinson stepping into the role that they had for Kadarius Toney, who they're now shopping on the market. So not crazy about this pick, but here you're swinging for the fences with upside. And Wan'Dale Robinson, even though his floor is essentially a trap door, his ceiling is as high as anybody in this portion of the draft.
Yeah, Dave, nice pick there with Kadarius Robinson.
Is that what I said?
I'm turning him into that.
I like that. I'll have to use that.
I like it.
At the 210, I took Trey McBride, tight end that got drafted by the Arizona Cardinals, and I'm not gonna lie, I was shocked to see him still here. I had seen Trey McBride get drafted even a lot earlier in drafts, and I think that we're looking too much at Zach Ertz being there the first year, but Zach Ertz probably isn't there the next year, and this becomes a big time play for Trey McBride, who's going to be in a great offense with an aging DeAndre Hopkins, who's now out for 6 games, and who knows what the future holds for him. Hollywood Brown, I mean, how long is it going to take for him to get disgruntled again? What's the identity for that offense going forward? It seems like they really want to put weapons around Kyler. Trey McBride led all tight ends in receptions and receiving yards at Colorado State. He was, bar none, at least to me, the top tight end in this draft. He goes to a great landing spot. Tight ends don't really do anything in year one unless your name is Kyle Pitts or Evan Ingram, Jeremy Shockey, like a couple guys here and there. Outside of that, they don't do anything anyway. So I like the redshirt year. I like that he can come in his second season, be productive, and he just gets to sit on my bench this year, and I get him at the end of the second round. I'm all in for that.
That's solid. Actually, I'm just glad that all the Trey McBride hype to Cincinnati, like I'm glad that's all over and done with. Because when I was hearing that they would take him in the first round, it gave me like I was having a tough time. That
would have been scary.
Night. I would have not been happy. I'll just leave it at that because I know this is a family program. I would not have been happy if my Bengals had done that at 31st overall. But let's take some happy news. Let's close this out. Brian Robinson was my next pick. I think he's become like more of the, I don't know, like sleeper's not a thing anymore, but I know he's like everybody's like quote unquote favorite late round running back, like out of this class. I mean, solid runner, like out of the backfield between the tackles. Actually, just his final season of college totaled like 35 receptions as well. So also like kind of checks the box in terms of being a decent pass catcher as well. I mean, it doesn't have like, I don't know, qualify his landing spot for me, fellas, because I don't know. How are you guys feeling about it at this point? Because I don't really see the path to touches like immediately, but almost like in a Khalil Herbert like type of way. Should we see an injury happen? Will we get 3-4 usable weeks out of him? Yes. But other than that, I don't really see a path to just like a starter role right out of the gate. I think that's kind of my hang up with him.
This is one of those picks where all it did was nuke somebody else's fantasy value. Like this just means Antonio Gibson. I checked on Keep Trade Cut today. He has dropped 28 spots in rankings just over the last few days. I mean, he is just tail spinning right now. They're saying that he's worth a second round rookie pick. So all this Brian Robinson pick did is show us what we kind of already knew with the re-signing of J.D. McKissick and the courting of some free agents, that they don't expect Antonio Gibson to be the guy long term.
That's what.
Well, he's opted out of surgery like multiple times on that foot. So who knows if it's ever going to be right?
Yeah.
All right, so that's going to lead us with the last pick here. I've got Matt Corral. We were talking about him maybe going to the Panthers in the first round. Obviously, that seems like eons ago, but he still ends up with the Panthers. And, this is another one where it's just you just got to beat Sam Darnold. Forget draft capital. We understand something weird happened in the NFL and nobody can really explain it. I get that. But he still only has to beat out Sam Darnold regardless of where he was drafted. And Sam Darnold had his 5th-year option picked up. It didn't work out. And he's not going to be the long-term answer there. So, yeah, Sam Darnold's their starter right now, as it sounded like was the slip up for McAdoo. But that doesn't mean he needs to be the starter long-term. I mean, if Matt Corral is starting week 1, are we really super surprised? And you got him at the end of your 2nd round in your Superflex draft. So just be cognizant of these quarterbacks and just know, like, you can't really compare it historically because so many of these guys went in the 3rd round where we thought they would be 1st-round picks, but they still landed in some pretty solid situations.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's going to do it for today. Thank you all for coming out and joining us for the 2-round Superflex rookie mock draft. This is the Dynasty newsletter, and we appreciate you coming out. Please like, subscribe, rate, review, and do all that YouTube stuff to help us out. Catch y'all next time.